Welcome back to Tarik Talk. Let's get into today's episode. Independent Art Fair is back in New York City for its 17th edition, running from May 14th through May 17th, 2026, and this year marks one of the biggest transformations in the fair's history. For the first time ever, Independent is taking over Pier 36 on the Lower East Side, moving away from its longtime home at Spring Studios in Tribeca and expanding into a completely reimagined waterfront venue. The move is major, not only because of the scale of the new space, but because it signals a new chapter for one of the most respected alternative art fairs in the world. Pier 36 offers more than 70,000 square feet of exhibition space overlooking the East River, and according to organizers, the expanded venue more than doubles the footprint of previous editions. And honestly, that feels very fitting for Independent. Unlike many traditional mega fairs that focus heavily on scale and spectacle, Independent has always positioned itself differently. The fair has built its reputation around discovery, experimentation, curatorial thinking, and emerging conversations within contemporary art. Independent often feels less like a conventional trade show and more like walking through a temporary curated exhibition where galleries are encouraged to take risks. That identity has made the fair incredibly influential over the years. Many artists and galleries that first gained major visibility through Independent later went on to exhibit internationally, join blue-chip programs, and enter museum collections. And for 2026, the fair seems fully committed to expanding that mission. This year's edition features 76 exhibitors from around the world, with nearly half of the galleries participating in Independent for the very first time. That statistic alone says a lot about the fair's philosophy. Instead of relying only on established names year after year, Independent continues to introduce fresh galleries, younger programs, and new voices into the conversation. And another major detail this year is that more than a third of the presentations are solo artist booths focused on artists who have never previously had solo presentations in New York. That initiative is now officially being framed under the fair's new curatorial platform called Independent Debuts. And that's one of the reasons so many curators, collectors, and art professionals pay close attention to Independent. It's often where you see the future of the art world before the wider market fully catches on. One of the biggest talking points surrounding this year's fair is the new architectural redesign of the space itself. The internationally recognized architecture firm SOIL, known formally as Solid Objectives Edinburgh Lou, has designed the exterior environment for Pier 36. While the exhibition interiors are being developed by Diogo Passarinho Studio, also known as DPS. And instead of creating a generic convention center layout, the fair is approaching the design almost like a conceptual exhibition. The architecture reportedly draws inspiration from New York's downtown art history and the city's legacy of artist-run spaces and experimental environments from the 1970s and 1980s. That historical connection feels important because Independent has always embraced a more downtown, artist-centered identity compared to some of the more corporate-feeling fairs. The Lower East Side location also strategically places the fair directly next to one of the strongest gallery neighborhoods in New York. And many of those nearby Lower East Side galleries are participating for the first time this year. New exhibitors include Spencer Brownstone Gallery, Kiang Maling, David Peter Francis, Superhouse, Osmos, and Post Times. Meanwhile, returning galleries include Uffner and Liu, March, and Long Story Short, helping create a strong local New York presence throughout the fair. Another major highlight this year is the return of Jack Shaman Gallery to a New York art fair after more than 6 years away. That return alone has generated a lot of conversation across the art world because Jack Shainman is one of the most respected contemporary galleries in the country, representing artists whose work frequently enters museum collections and major institutional exhibitions. Independent 2026 is also heavily emphasizing international participation. Galleries are arriving from Europe, Asia, Latin America, and across the United States, creating a global mix of perspectives while still maintaining the fair's intimate atmosphere. And unlike some larger fairs where booths can feel overwhelming or commercially repetitive, Independent encourages galleries to build focused presentations that feel almost museum-like. There's a slower rhythm to the fair. Visitors are encouraged to spend time with the work rather than simply rushing from booth to booth. And that slower, more thoughtful environment is part of what has made Independent so respected among artists and curators. One of the most exciting crossovers this year involves fashion. Independent 2026 is hosting a special project connected to Comme des Garçons and legendary designer Rei Kawakubo. More than 20 semi-unique recent pieces by Kawakubo will reportedly be presented within a site-specific architectural installation designed by the designer herself. And this marks the first major New York presentation of this body of work since the Metropolitan Museum of Art's groundbreaking Rei Kawakubo and Comme des Garçons exhibition back in 2017. That crossover between fashion, architecture, installation, and contemporary art feels very aligned with where the art world is heading right now. The boundaries between disciplines continue to dissolve. Fashion brands increasingly collaborate with artists. Artists create installations that feel cinematic or theatrical. Design becomes part of exhibition making itself. And fairs like Independent are becoming spaces where all of those worlds intersect. There's also a strong nonprofit and community partnership element surrounding this year's edition. Independent announced a partnership with the historic Henry Street Settlement, one of New York's oldest social service and arts organizations. The organization will host a gala celebration during the opening night of the fair, with proceeds helping support Henry Street's social services, healthcare initiatives, and arts programming throughout New York City. That partnership reflects something important about Independent's identity. The fair repeatedly describes itself as a mission-driven organization rather than simply a commercial marketplace. And while yes, major collectors and institutions attend Independent every year, there's still a visible attempt to maintain a connection to artists, nonprofits, alternative culture, and community engagement. And during Independent Week, the Lower East Side itself becomes part of the experience. Visitors move between the fair, nearby gallery openings, artist dinners, rooftop events, pop-ups, after-parties, and museum exhibitions throughout downtown Manhattan. The entire neighborhood becomes activated. That energy is one of the things that makes New York during May feel so special for the art world. You have frieze happening simultaneously across the city. You have gallery openings in Chelsea and the Lower East Side. You have nonprofit spaces launching exhibitions. You have collectors flying in from around the world. And in the middle of all of that activity, Independent offers something slightly different. It feels more experimental, more intimate, more discovery-driven. It's a fair where visitors often leave talking about artists they had never heard of before entering the building. And honestly, that's increasingly rare in today's art market. Many fairs have become extremely predictable, dominated by the same names and same presentations repeated internationally from city to city. Independent pushes against that. The fair is intentionally structured around surprise, experimentation, and new conversations. And because of that, it often feels more connected to the actual evolution of contemporary art rather than simply the commercial side of it. Of course, sales still matter. Major acquisitions happen here. Museum curators attend. Collectors buy work. Careers are launched. But there's also a visible effort to preserve curiosity inside the experience. And that balance between commerce and experimentation may be exactly why Independent has continued to grow in influence over the past 17 years. For artists especially, Independent can represent a huge moment of visibility. A successful presentation at the fair can completely shift the trajectory of an artist's career, leading to institutional interest, international exhibitions, press coverage, and long-term gallery relationships. And for audiences, it creates a rare opportunity to encounter a broad spectrum of contemporary art practices all under one roof. Painting, sculpture, installation, textiles, conceptual work, photography, moving image, performance, architecture, fashion-based projects, all of it coexisting together inside this new waterfront environment at Pier 36. There's also something poetic about the location itself. A pier along the East River, industrial architecture, downtown Manhattan, contemporary art occupying a transitional urban space. It feels connected to New York's long history of artists transforming overlooked or industrial spaces into centers of creativity. And that history becomes part of the atmosphere of the fair itself. Independent Art Fair 2026 runs from May 14th through May 17th at Pier 36 on the Lower East Side of New York City. For collectors, curators, artists, and anyone interested in where contemporary art is heading next, Independent continues to be one of the most important and most closely watched fairs in New York.